The thunder started at 9:47 p.m., rolling across the Colorado Rockies like a freight train nobody ordered. But Elena Vasquez barely looked up from the register she was counting for the third time, hoping the numbers would somehow change. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. $43. That's what Tuesday night brought to Time's Mountain View Family Restaurant *, a 24-hour diner that hadn't seen 24 hours of customers in months. After paying her staff and covering the daily expenses, Elena was looking at another night where keeping the lights on meant choosing between groceries and gasoline. At 52, Elena's hands told the story. Her smile tried to hide. 3 kids raised alone after her husband died in Afghanistan. A restaurant inherited from her mother that was bleeding money in a town where the interstate had redirected traffic 20 miles south. And a foreclosure notice hidden in her purse that gave her exactly 14 days to find $12,000 or lose everything. She was wiping down the counter when the first drops hit the windows. Then the sky opened up like someone had torn a hole in heaven. And that's when she heard them coming. The rumble started low, distant, but grew into something that shook the building. Through the rain-streaked windows, Elena watched 12 motorcycles pull into her empty parking lot. Not cruisers out for a Sunday ride. These were road warriors, leather-clad and rain-soaked, their Harley patches visible even in the storm. Iron Serpents MC. Elena's heart hammered. She knew that name. Everyone in Colorado knew that name. And as 12 bikers dismounted and headed for her door, Elena faced a choice that would change her life forever. The bell above the door chimed like a church bell, announcing Judgment Day. 12 men filed in, water pooling at their boots, leather jackets steaming. They moved with the quiet respect of people who understood they were entering someone else's sanctuary. The leader was a mountain of a man, maybe 50, with silver hair pulled back and eyes that had seen things that would break most people. The patch on his vest read, Iron Serpents MC, with President underneath. But it was his face that stopped Elena cold weathered by roads and grief, but not unkind. Evening, ma'am. His voice was gravel and honey. I'm James Steele Morrison. We know it's late, but we're hoping you might still be serving. Behind him stood 11 other bikers, young and old, different races, but all wearing the same expression of bone-deep exhaustion. They'd been riding hard, running from something or toward something Elena couldn't guess. Kitchens open until midnight, Elena managed, though her voice shook slightly. Have a seat anywhere. They took 3 booths in the back, removing their soaked jackets with careful precision. Elena grabbed menus, then coffee mugs, her waitressing instincts overriding her fear. These weren't criminals looking for trouble. These were men who'd been riding in a storm and needed shelter. As she poured coffee, Elena noticed details that painted a picture. Steele had a military tattoo on his forearm, Army Rangers. The man beside him kept touching a photo in his wallet. Another had rosary beads wrapped around his knuckles. These weren't monsters. They were fathers and sons and brothers, soaked to the bone and grateful for warmth. What brings you through in this weather? Elena asked, refilling Steele's cup. Steele exchanged glances with his crew. We were riding from Denver to a memorial service in Utah. Brother named Rico died last week. Cancer took him fast. His voice cracked slightly. We've been riding 18 hours straight to get there, but this storm came out of nowhere. Roads are flooding, and he gestured helplessly. Elena felt something shift in her chest. These weren't dangerous strangers. They were mourning friends, caught in a storm, far from home. I'm sorry for your loss, she said softly. Rico would have loved this place, said one of the younger bikers, looking around at the faded photographs on the walls. The hand-painted signs, the kind of authentic atmosphere that corporate chains couldn't fake. He always said diners were the heart of America. They ordered big, 12 burger platters, extra fries, pie, endless coffee refills. The kind of meal that said they'd been running on gas station snacks and determination. Elena fired up the grill herself, Her night cook had gone home hours ago, a euro, and filled the diner with the smell of real food. 4:45 minutes, the Mountain View family restaurant came alive. Conversation, laughter, the clink of silverware against plates. Elena watched these hardened men transform into something softer, a euro, storytellers sharing memories of their fallen brother, making plans for tomorrow's service. When the last plate was clean, Elena totaled the check, $247.83. She walked it over with a smile that had become automatic after 20 years in the service industry. But when Steele looked at that number, Elena saw something that made her blood go cold. "Ma'am," Steele said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We got a problem." The wallet Steele pulled from his vest was nearly empty. A $20 bill, some change, and a photo of a little girl, a euro, his granddaughter. Elena would guess. One by one, the other bikers opened their wallets. Elena watched hope drain from their faces. They had maybe $60 between 12 men. "We spent everything getting to Rico's funeral," Steele explained, his jaw tight with embarrassment. "Gas, food. The motel last night when we thought we'd make better time. We figured we'd hit Utah by evening, but this storm." He gestured at the windows where rain was still hammering. The youngest biker, who couldn't have been older than 25, was staring at his empty wallet like it had betrayed him. An older man with white hair was counting coins, a euro, actual quarters and dimes, a euro, in his palm. "We shouldn't have ordered," Steele continued. "That's on us. We were so damn hungry, and this place, it reminded us of a diner Rico used to take us to in New Mexico. He didn't finish." Elena stood there, holding a check for nearly $250. Behind her, hidden in her purse, was that foreclosure notice. 14 days to find $12,000. Every penny mattered. Every single dollar was the difference between keeping her mother's restaurant and watching it get auctioned off to strangers. But Elena also knew something about being broke and hungry. She'd worked 3 jobs after her husband died, feeding her kids mac and cheese for dinner while she served steak to strangers. She knew what it felt like to count change for gas money, to calculate whether you could afford both groceries and electricity, and she'd learned something her mother taught her, something that had nothing to do with profit margins or business sense. You don't let good people leave hungry if you can help it. The silence stretched. 12 bikers watched Elena, waiting for judgment. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains like an omen. Elena looked at the check in her hands. $247.83. That was her grocery money for 2 weeks. That was the phone bill. That was the insurance payment that was already 3 days late. Then she thought about Rico, the brother they'd lost. About these men riding 18 hours through hell to honor their friend. About the fact that grief doesn't stop for empty wallets or flooded roads. Without a word, without ceremony, without any of the drama that moments like this seem to deserve, Elena tore the check in half, then in half again. Then again. The sound of paper ripping echoed through the diner like a gunshot. "It's on the house," Elena said quietly. "You buried a brother. Nobody should leave here hungry." The silence that followed could have stopped time. Steele's eyes filled with something that might have been tears if men like him allowed themselves that release. The younger biker put his head in his hands. The old man with the white hair whispered, "Jesus Christ." "Ma'am," Steele managed, his voice thick. "We can't accept a euro." "You already did," Elena interrupted gently. "It's done." Steele stood slowly, like he was moving through water. He unpinned a patch from his vest, a euro, the Iron Serpent's logo, black and silver, worn from years of road wear. He set it on the table like it was an offering. "In our world, this means something," he said. "This means we owe you, and we pay our debts." One by one, the other 11 bikers did the same. 12 patches laid out like promises Elena didn't understand yet, but would learn to treasure. Steele extended his hand, and Elena shook it. His grip was firm, grateful, and in that handshake was an entire conversation about honor and kindness and the kind of dignity that has nothing to do with money. "Thank you," Steele said. "You'll never know what this meant." But he was wrong about that. Elena was about to discover exactly what it meant. They left quietly, reverently, each biker stopping to shake Elena's hand and whisper their thanks. She watched their taillights disappear into the storm and felt something settle in her chest. The quiet satisfaction of doing the right thing, even when it cost her everything. Elena didn't know that Steele pulled over at the first gas station and made a phone call. She didn't know about Ghost, the legendary road captain who'd been riding since before most of these men were born. She didn't know about the Iron Serpent's national network that could mobilize chapters across 8 states with a single phone call. "Ghost," Steele said into his phone, rain still dripping from his beard. "We got a situation. Not trouble, the opposite. There's a woman in Colorado who just restored my faith in humanity." Ghost listened as Steele told the story. About Rico's funeral. About being caught in the storm. About Elena tearing up a $250 check when she looked like she could barely afford coffee for herself. "She didn't just feed us," Steele concluded. "She gave us dignity when we had nothing. In a world that looks at us and sees criminals, she saw human beings." Ghost was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 30 years on the road. "Send me the location. I'll make some calls." Within 2 hours, the story was on the Iron Serpent's emergency network. Not just Colorado chapters, but Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, Arizona. The message was simple, and it was absolute. Asterisk. A restaurant owner in Colorado showed respect when the world shows fear. She fed brothers when they had nothing. The serpents don't forget. Asterisk. The responses came fast. Colorado Springs chapter €1. We're in. How many you need? Utah Serpents €1. We ride for her. New Mexico chapters mobilizing now. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. By dawn, something unprecedented was happening. 8 chapters were coordinating the largest brotherhood response in Iron Serpent's history. Not for revenge or territory or club business, but for a 52-year-old widow who'd torn up a check in a storm. Elena woke up Thursday morning to the sound of thunder. Except it wasn't thunder. And it wasn't a storm. It was engines. Hundreds of them. She stumbled to her window and saw something that didn't make sense. Motorcycles were streaming down the highway toward her restaurant. Not 12 this time. Not 20. Asterisk hundreds. Asterisk Elena threw on clothes and drove the 10 minutes to work with her heart hammering. The closer she got, the more bikes she saw. They lined the highway like a mechanical army, chrome gleaming, leather and patches, engines rumbling in perfect formation. When she turned into the restaurant parking lot, Elena stopped breathing. 800 motorcycles were arranged in perfect rows. Behind them stood their riders, a wall of leather and loyalty stretching back to the highway. Men and women, young and old, patches from 8 different states. And standing at the front, holding a leather bag that looked older than Elena, was Steele. He saw her car and nodded. A simple gesture that somehow commanded the attention of 800 people. Every engine went silent simultaneously. The sudden quiet was more overwhelming than the noise. Elena climbed out of her car on shaking legs. 800 bikers watched her walk across the parking lot toward Steele, who was smiling like he'd just watched Christmas and the 4th of July happen on the same day. "Morning, Elena," Steele said. "We came to pay our debt." Elena stared at the bag in Steele's hands, then at the wall of leather-clad humanity behind him, then back at Steele's weathered face. "I don't understand," she whispered. "What is this?" "This," Steele said, hefting the bag slightly, "is what happens when kindness meets brotherhood, when someone shows respect to the grieving and the broken." He opened the bag. Elena looked inside, and her knees nearly buckled. Cash. Stacks of it. 20s, 50s, hundreds. More money than she'd seen in her entire life condensed into a single moment. $18,000. Steele said quietly. Collected from 8 Iron Serpents chapters in 18 hours. That's what your kindness is worth to us. Elena's vision blurred. $18,000. That was more than the foreclosure. That was keeping the restaurant open. That was her children's college funds. That was breathing room she hadn't felt in years. But Steele wasn't finished. "Ghost," he called. An older man stepped forward, maybe 60, with a scar across his neck and eyes that had seen the worst of humanity and somehow still believed in the best. Ghost's voice was rough, damaged somehow, like he'd had to fight for every word. "Ma'am, I've been riding for 32 years. Seen people at their worst, seen brotherhood at its best. What you did Tuesday night, a euro that was honor. Pure honor." He handed Elena an envelope. "Letter from our national treasury. We're establishing the Rico Martinez Memorial Fund. $5,000 to help struggling restaurants in small communities. You're the first recipient." Elena's hands shook as she opened the letter. Official letterhead, legal language, but the meaning was clear. The Iron Serpents were creating a permanent fund to help businesses like hers. And they were naming it after the brother she'd helped them honor. "There's more," Ghost continued. He gestured to the crowd behind him. "Every chapter represented here has committed to making your restaurant a regular stop. Official Iron Serpents Roadhouse status. You'll never lack for customers again." Elena looked at the sea of faces a euro. Hundreds of people who'd dropped everything to drive to Colorado for a woman they'd never met. Because 12 of their brothers had been shown dignity when they expected judgment. A young woman biker stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal silver hair and kind eyes. "I'm Maria Santos, Colorado Springs chapter president. We've been watching your restaurant struggle for months, wanting to help but not knowing how. Steele's phone call gave us permission to do what we should have done already." Another voice from the crowd. "My brother died last year. Cancer, like Rico. The way you honored our grief a euro, that meant something. My daughter works at restaurants," called another. "She's been treated like dirt by customers who think waitresses are servants. You showed respect. That matters." One by one, they shared stories. Personal stories. About loss and grief and the way the world treats bikers like criminals. Until they need help changing a tire or jumping a dead battery or finding directions when they're lost. "In our world," Steele said, his voice carrying across the parking lot, "loyalty is everything. Honor is everything. You honored us when we had nothing. Now we honor you." Elena wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. "I just made you dinner. It was the right thing to do." "The right thing," repeated Ghost with a smile that transformed his scarred face, "is the rarest thing. You did it when it cost you everything. That makes you family." The crowd erupted, 800 voices shouting, engines revving, a celebration that could probably be heard 3 counties over. Elena stood in the center of it all, clutching a bag that contained her salvation and an envelope that promised her future, surrounded by the most unlikely family she could have imagined. But the biggest surprise was still coming. Steele raised his hand for quiet. The crowd settled immediately. "Elena," he said, his voice softer now, more personal. "The 12 of us who came Tuesday night a euro, we weren't just riding to Rico's funeral. We were riding away from something too." He paused, emotion cracking his voice. 3 of us just lost our jobs. Company downsizing. 2 of us are going through divorces. 1 of us a euro. He gestured to a young man in the crowd. A euro, just found out his son has leukemia. Elena's heart broke for them all over again. "We were broken, and grieving," Steele continued. "And you looked at us and saw human beings worthy of kindness. You fed us not because we deserved it, but because you're the kind of person who feeds people. That restored something in us that we thought was gone forever." The young man he gestured to step forward, tears streaming down his face. "My boy is 8 years old. When I tell him about the lady who helped us when we had nothing, I want him to know that people like you still exist." Elena couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She looked around at 800 faces, a euro men and women who'd chosen to spend their Thursday proving that kindness matters, that honor still means something, that sometimes the universe notices and sometimes it pays back in full. "Thank you," she whispered, but her voice carried across the silent parking lot. "Thank you all." 6 months later, The Times Mountain View Family Restaurant Times looks like a different place entirely. The parking lot that once sat empty now hosts a dozen motorcycles most nights. The walls display patches from chapters across the West, a euro, honorary decorations from a family Elena never knew she was joining. The foreclosure notice? Paid in full the day after the Brotherhood arrived. The restaurant that was bleeding money? Now turning its first profit in 3 years. Elena hired back the night cook, added a breakfast server, and started serving the kind of hearty meals that bikers tell stories about. But the money wasn't the biggest change. Every Tuesday night, Elena reserves 3 booths in the back. For travelers caught in storms, for people counting change for coffee, for anyone who needs to be fed without questions asked. A hand-painted sign above those booths reads, Rico's Corner, a euro, in memory of Brotherhood. Steele and his crew stop by monthly, always on their way to or from somewhere important. They bring stories from the road, updates on the young man's son. The leukemia is in remission, and a kind of gruff affection that Elena has learned is how bikers say, I love you, without using the words. The Rico Martinez Memorial Fund has helped 6 other struggling restaurants across Colorado. Each one gets the same message Elena received. Honor those who show you respect, and the Brotherhood takes care of its own. Elena's daughter graduated college last year, paid for with money from that leather bag and tips from customers who'd heard the story and wanted to be part of something good. She's studying social work now, inspired by her mother's example of seeing humanity in unlikely places. The Iron Serpents made Elena an honorary member, a euro, the first non-writing member in chapter history. She has a patch now. Mountain View Family Restaurant, a euro, official roadhouse, displayed behind the register where everyone can see it. But the moment Elena treasures most happened 3 weeks ago, when a young couple stumbled in during a snowstorm. Their car had broken down, they had no money for a tow truck, and the woman was pregnant and scared. Elena served them dinner without being asked to pay. She called a brother in the Colorado Springs chapter who ran a towing service. By morning, their car was fixed, their bill was covered, and they were crying the same grateful tears Elena had seen in Steele's eyes that stormy Tuesday night. Why did you help us? The woman asked as they prepared to leave. Elena smiled and touched the Iron Serpent's patch on her apron. Because 12 strangers taught me that kindness isn't about deserving it. It's about being human, and humans take care of each other. The couple drove away knowing they'd witnessed something sacred. Something that started with a torn-up check and grew into a movement. Elena still works the night shift at the Mountain View Family Restaurant. Still pours coffee and serves pie and asks customers about their day. But she's not struggling anymore. Not drowning anymore. Not invisible anymore. She's family to a brotherhood that spans 8 states, an honorary protector of a tradition that says when someone shows you dignity in your darkest moment, you remember. You repay. You protect. And sometimes, late at night when the diner is quiet and the coffee is fresh and the mountain wind is whistling outside, Elena thinks about that stormy Tuesday when 12 strangers changed her life. About how a choice made in kindness rippled outward into something beautiful. About how the world is full of Ricos a euro. People who need honoring, who deserve remembering, who teach us that brotherhood isn't about blood or patches or shared roads. It's about seeing someone who needs help and saying, I've got you. It's about feeding people not because they deserve it, but because feeding people is what decent humans do. And it's about understanding that sometimes, when you give everything you have to strangers in a storm, those strangers become the family that saves you back. The Iron Serpents don't forget kindness. Neither should we. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.